Up, y'all. Welcome to this week's episode of The Breakdown, which I believe
breakdown
is the first breakdown of 2022. I'm going to need you to do that every time. I like that.
I will.
Anyways, all right, so what we do each week on The Breakdown is we simply take Sunday's message and we break it down. So we're going to read the passage. We're going to talk about a couple things that maybe stood out to us. But if you have not watched this week's message, I want to encourage you to be sure you go back and watch it. And you'll be like, oh, yeah, man, Amanda and Andrew were so right about everything they said. So be sure to check that out because it was an awesome message. All right, so this week, Pastor started off talking about in our There Is More series that in order to have more of God needs more of you. And he kicked us off in Mark chapter 14, verses 3 through 9, which Amanda is going to read for us.
Yes, I will read that. Okay. While he was in Bethany at the house of Simon the leper, he was reclining at the table, and the women came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured it on his head, but some were expressing the indignation to one another.
Okay, pause there real quick. Do you know what nard is?
I just feel like it's
I
like
don't have a
lard.
No, that's what I was thinking. Like I pictured like Crisco in my head for
That's
some
what I
reason.
was thinking
That's
too.
not what we're talking about.
I
Anyway,
feel
it's
like we
just
need to Google it. Ask Alexa.
Google it. It's a perfume of some type. All right. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Okay, so why has this perfume been wasted? For the perfume might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor. And they began to scold her.
All right. So what I can give you is that this perfume was about a year's worth of wages.
Wow.
So what was some of the controversy that Pastor talked about this weekend in her pouring out this perfume?
I mean, okay, so he said that it was probably the nicest and most important thing that Mary owned, right? It was something that she held to high value, and she was wasting it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, well, in their mind.
In their mind. Yeah. And in world's mind, like if you have something expensive and you just throw it down, I mean, you're wasting it.
Yeah.
You know,
and who was it that was giving her a hard time for that?
Judas.
Right. Judas. You don't want to be like Judas. But it was other people following Jesus. You know, I did this little air quote, especially because we're talking about Judas, but it was other people following Jesus who mocked her and criticized her for the gift that she gave the Lord.
Absolutely. And, you know, Pastor was saying, like, we're talking about the people that were there were like Lazarus, right? And Martha and Mary. And like, it's just an incredible group of disciples, you know, that are just following Jesus. And they're the ones that are being judgmental.
Yeah.
You know?
You know what's funny? Like, us church people, we are so judgmental sometimes. Let's just be honest. Like, I'm thinking back to times in my life where I'll be like, I've learned so much from both of my parents in so many different ways. They live their lives so generous and just however God has blessed them. And when I hear this story, I think of my mom, to be honest with you. Like, my mom has not ever been one that just has everything in the world, but she has always been incredibly generous, like above and beyond generous with what she has for anybody who the Lord prompted her to help. And that's what I think of in this message. Like, I remember times I'm the judgmental person in this story. I'm not Jesus in the story. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember times where my mom would go above and beyond to help somebody. I'm like, Mom, like, is that wise?
Right.
And it's so funny because when God calls us to do something, it may not seem wise.
Right.
But it's obedient.
Well, and I think so many times too, people, when they look at what they're giving and it's like, what do I have to give?
Yeah.
You know, and it's, God has uniquely equipped us with everything that we need. And Pastor said something along those lines in his sermon today. But God has given us everything we need. We don't need anything else from him but a deeper relationship with him. And the more we sit with him and the more we're in his word, that's when we can really hone in on and what our gifting is and what we should be giving to the Lord, you know? And okay, so you might have $10 to give to the Lord. Maybe that's the most you can do. When Derek and I started dating and we started going to Long Hollow together, I mean, we were living on beans and rice and beans.
Right. Yeah.
Like, we had nothing of tangible, like, financial, anything that we could give to the Lord. But we gave what we could, and we gave with our time, and we stayed in his word.
Right.
And so that was our act of worship to him. Was maybe it was just $5 that week. And some weeks it was nothing.
Right.
But we tried to always stay in the word with him and gave everything we could every time.
And I think that's key. I know for me, the more I'm in the word, the more I live a generous life. And I'm not saying I give more, like, I'm not saying my tithe goes up, although it has over the years, but like the more I'm in God's word, the more I just live out of the overflow of generosity, whether it is financially, whether it's my time, whether it's just seeing people. Like, I just see the world differently when I'm consistently in the word. And it changes everything. And it's fun. It is fun, y'all. Like, it is. I'm saying it is so much fun to live out of the overflow and to live a generous life that doesn't make sense to the world. It is fun and it is scary, but I know that I can trust the Lord with it.
Absolutely. And it's all his anyways, right?
It is all his anyways,
He's giving us the abilities or the talents to, you know, like, I met your people in your neighborhood this morning, and you met them by hanging up something for them. It's not my gift to hang something up, but it's your gift. You are very, you are very artistic. You work with wood. I mean, but like,
what else? Tell
you
me.
are gifted in a lot of areas that God has given you, but it's also our responsibility to use the gifts and talents that God has given us to bless others. And I see that in you. I see that in our staff members. I see it in a lot of our congregation. And so I think it's important that we, I mean, yes, but I feel like it's important that we take the time to seek out who God has created us to be, not compare ourselves to others, but just who are we in you, Lord? Who did you create us to be? What gifts and talents do we have? And what can we do with those gifts to bless others?
Exactly right. And we're going to come right back to that in a second. Let's talk about the sin of comparison. That's something Pastor talked about this week that really hit me. So what maybe stood out to you when he said that?
Man, when he was talking about comparison, he was saying everybody wants bigger is better. Everybody wants more. And okay, for a long time, we actually didn't host life group because we were in a starter home and I didn't feel like it was pretty enough. Like it's not from a magazine or it wasn't clean enough or I didn't have a massive living room. I had a tiny living room space that could hold 4 people, you know? And so for a long time, we didn't lead a life group. I let the comparison of other people hinder me from growing with others and not opening up my house and home when my heart is to open my house and home. I like to be hospitable. And so that really hit me hard. It brought me back to a time that I remember that. And I remember that even people in our life group that we've had now, they'll always, oh, my house isn't clean. I don't care if your house is clean.
I got 3 kids. Come on. Like, I know how it is.
There's laundry everywhere. Great. Walk in my laundry room because you can't, you know, but it's just that, comparison can be so crippling.
It can be. You know? And there's been so many seasons where I've been like, okay, God, if I only had this, then I would do this. If I only had that nice house, that bigger house, then I would host life group. If I only had more money, man, God, then I would give a lot. If I only had this influence, this platform, then I would really use my voice for you. And God hit me in service when he was talking about that. No, Andrew, what do you do with what you have? What do you do with what I've already entrusted you with? And I don't think it's about the size of our gift, but about our obedience.
Absolutely.
You know, you were talking about the small house. One of my favorite seasons of life group and doing life with people. Life group is simply an environment where you're hanging out with other believers and you're talking about God's word and you're doing life together. Like it's a fun thing to be a part of and to have that biblical community. And one of my favorite seasons in life group is when Jenny, myself, our 3 boys, and our dog lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. And we are not apartment people. Like, I am the redneck in our neighborhood. I got projects going.
Loud.
I'm loud. Exactly. Like, I got extra things all over. Like, I'm just not an apartment person. But we're living in this 1-bedroom apartment, and we just started meeting some neighbors. And next thing you know, we had like 35 people in a 1-bedroom apartment. Amazing. It was crazy, y'all. It was so crazy. But it was so much fun just living a crazy life for the Lord. And I want to ask you, what does obedience look like for you? Amanda, you were so kind a minute ago talking about things that the Lord gifted me with and how I can use that. And here's the thing, like, God has uniquely gifted and crafted you to be amazingly you. Like, you were beautifully and wonderfully made in your mother's womb, exactly the way God wanted you to be. So everything about you, the way you think, the way you look, the way you talk, the gift sets you have, how smart you are, how creative you are, the way you talk to people, the way you relate to people, whether you're outgoing or whether you're quiet, like all of that, God has uniquely made you the exact way he has and he has a plan and a purpose for your life. So how can we surrender who God has made you to be, the things he has entrusted you with, for his kingdom and for his glory?
Yeah, and I think it's finding that out and naming it and calling it. And like, I have children, you have children. it's creating a culture and changing the way we think of things, not comparing ourselves to what's on TV or YouTube or things like that. But it's really taking that and telling my daughter Everly, hey, you are so good at thinking of others, or hey, you are so good at randomly coming up with a bedtime story that maybe doesn't make any sense, but one day it absolutely could. But you know, it's really calling it out and encouraging one another. And as believers, we are called to do that. We are supposed to be for everybody. And so I think it's important that we look for that too. When we see maybe a mom that's struggling in the grocery store, it's not judgment. It's, hey, you are doing an incredible job keeping these children alive today. You know what I mean? It's
that's
just
a win.
Yes, it's loving people where they are. And I think it's so important that we constantly do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so this is what we want you to do. We want you to take some time praying, meditating, journaling, reading God's word this week, and just maybe make a list of how God has made you. And don't be bashful, okay? Like, if God has given you something awesome, write it down, okay? What are some hobbies that you have? Like, for me, I'm into trucks, right? And I use my hobby of being into trucks to talk to other people about trucks, but then also talk to them about Jesus. So how can you surrender the ways God has made you, the talents you have, the hobbies you have, and use that for God's kingdom? All right, Amanda, that was fun.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Good. Thank you guys for joining us on this week's episode of The Breakdown.
Breakdown.